Welcome back. So it's early in July, but it's always fun to kind of tier things out. So, looking at which teams are contenders, probably playoff teams in 2026, teams that are just below the playoff line, maybe, and maybe not in the mix for a top spot. Thus, me picking this magnet here. And the Doink magnet, which I almost never have used on any board, gets used here to denote teams that are rebuilding, retooling, and very likely the top teams in contention for that number one draft pick. So we'll start at the top of the board with contenders, and I'm going to try to make this 8, 8, 8, 8. So 8 for each. That is going to be very, very difficult because there is definitely parity in certain parts of the league. Although at the top, there hasn't been parity for a while. So I'm going to say Florida. They've won back-to-back Stanley Cups. They've kept the team together. We'll see how things go this season, but definitely contenders for a third straight Stanley Cup. And the jersey that I'm wearing, if anybody's curious, this is a starter. I think I got this for like $50 off eBay. It's one of those fashion jerseys. No, the team never wore this. I've got numerous fashion jerseys, and they're fun. I think they're fun. I would love to see Fanatics bring them back. So, Fanatics, if you're watching, fashion jerseys, they're a good way to go. You get to see a jersey a team never wore, and they're kind of interesting. But yeah, Florida, definitely a contender. I will say Dallas, despite my concerns with depth that's been lost, I think Dallas remains a contender. The Edmonton Oilers, despite concerns over some of the losses there too, I would say Edmonton's still a contender. They've got McDavid, they've got Draisaitl. They've got a team that is good enough to get through the West. At the very least, they're still going to be, I think, this coming season, a top team in the West. So I would have Dallas as a contender. I'll keep Tampa in the contender spot as well because I do think that Tampa may very well have one more run left in them with this core. You've got Kucherov, you've got Hedman. Of course, they added Gensel. It's a pretty good team. Yeah, they got taken out in the first round by Florida, but Florida hasn't lost a round in a couple of years now. So, other contenders, I would say Colorado still qualifies as a contender in my eyes. They have struggled in the playoffs since their Stanley Cup win in 2022, but I think they're still right there. I would say Vegas. So Vegas would be the fourth team in the West that I look at and say, yep, probably a contender. I think picking up Marner and losing Pietrangelo on the blue line is going to hurt them, but I still think we see a team that's a contender for next season. And since I've got 4 teams from the West and 2 from the East, let's see if we can find a couple more from the East. Carolina. Carolina has been a team that's got to the conference final, hasn't got past. Maybe this coming season, maybe they get there. Maybe adding Ehlers helps them get over that hump. And then for a fourth team in the East, if I was going to call a team a true cup contender, that's actually not an easy one. It's tough to say Toronto. Part of me wants to say Toronto, but with the loss of Marner, and it just feels like their depth chart, I don't know if Toronto's going to be able to keep that up next season. New Jersey? Would New Jersey work? I'll cheat. I'll put the Caps here. Look, the Caps, they did win the East this year. They had a very strong regular season. They had their struggles come playoff time, but there still may very well be something there. Which brings us to the next line, and I'm going to put Toronto as the first team that I see as a good playoff team. Absolutely still a playoff team. But until they replace Marner, and we're early in the summer, so that's what makes part of this really fun for me. It's early in the summer. This is not a power rankings. And so I see Toronto on this line, although they could make an addition this summer that puts them up here. So we'll see if that does take place. New Jersey belongs on that line as well, I believe. New Jersey's a team I'm going to talk about soon. I do have their logo on the board for tomorrow. I will be talking about the New Jersey Devils tomorrow. In these videos I've been looking at various teams from around the National Hockey League. I will cover all 32 teams, including yours. So, yeah, the New Jersey Devils, I think, are still a playoff team next season. St. Louis, I think, kind of has to be a playoff team next season. I'd be very surprised if they're not. St. Louis is on the board twice. Coming out of free agency, that can happen. Minnesota's on the board twice, too. I mean, technically, I could put them on 2 separate lines, but it's not April 1st, and I'm not doing that. Winnipeg. Winnipeg is still a playoff team. I think that their struggles in the playoffs definitely cause them not to be on that top line. So if you're wondering why they're not on that top line, I just don't see them as being a strong contender. They have struggled. And this year, where they had the ridiculously good regular season, just couldn't get over the hump in the playoffs, it feels like that's indicative of how things are in Winnipeg these days. I'm going to put Montreal in this line, and Habs fans are probably going to be pretty happy that, hey, look, Montreal, I see them as being a playoff team next season. I think we'll see incremental improvement. We'll see some improvement there. I'm going to pick a team from the West next. I think the Kings are still a playoff team. I don't see any reason why they won't be a playoff team. I don't know what they do in said playoffs, but I still think they're a playoff team. So now we got one left in the West and one left in the East. So let's just group together the teams that should be in the mix in both conferences. So Ottawa, you got Calgary, Vancouver, Minnesota. Utah's going to be in the mix. Then in the East, the Rangers are going to be in the mix with Ottawa. I love the NHL for the fact that half the league misses the playoffs now. Detroit, I think Boston envisions themselves as being in that spot. So one from each list. I'm going to go with Ottawa or the Rangers. I'll go with Ottawa, but this is not easy. And then out West, the Canucks are thinking about a bounce back, but I have a feeling that Utah could be really, really difficult to defeat this year. I think Utah, if they can find consistency in their game, and if some of the young players take that next step, Utah could be really, really difficult. That could be a tough one. So just as sort of an off the cuff, and people always take the off the cuff videos way too seriously. But because they'll just skip to the end, and I can't believe you got my team outside the playoffs. Unsubscribe. But I got to pick somebody, and it's not easy, which means that this line here, I've almost got filled up. So I have the Rangers in this area here, although there are ways the Rangers can jump above the line. This is how tough that is. This is how things get really, really difficult. Calgary, I think they're going to stay in the mix. It kind of depends what happens with Anderson. If they move Anderson and they just get futures back, that's going to weaken their blue line, obviously, and it might signal that they might be further outside of the playoffs. I do think Vancouver is going to be close, which might drive Vancouver fans insane. And I might as well put Boston next to Vancouver, because sure, why not? So that's 4. Minnesota I have down here too. Only for the reason that I think Utah takes that next step, and I don't know that St. Louis, Winnipeg, or LA necessarily drop out of the playoffs. And Detroit. So yeah, Detroit fans probably won't be happy about that one either. But this is where that happens, and this is something that I see with the power rankings too, where people will say, well, my team's pretty good. Right. It's just other teams are better. And that's the thing. There are some teams in here, they're pretty good teams, but there are other teams that are going to be better. And there are always now going to be good teams that miss the playoffs, which is why people want to expand the playoffs and dilute the whole thing. So that puts Columbus on that level too. I really want to be wrong about Columbus, but for me to be wrong about Columbus, either Toronto, New Jersey, Montreal, or Ottawa has to fall out, which could happen, but like Ottawa is the one that to me I think I could see potentially falling out, which means that, let's see, how many Eastern teams do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So let's get another Western team onto this line. I'll go with Seattle. I'll go with Seattle on that line. Does that work? So when we get down to the rebuild, and I'll rank this. So who do I think is going to end up being last overall in the standings? I don't know. I don't want San Jose to be last overall in the standings. But the thing is, I know San Jose probably doesn't want to be. Chicago doesn't want to be. That's a tough one. Trying to figure out exactly who's going to be furthest in the tank for McKenna. Yeah, that's tough. I'll go with Chicago, and with apologies to Blackhawk fans. And I don't think we're going to see teams with less than 20 wins this coming season, but you never know. And I'll put San Jose second. Third, I'll go with Nashville, third on the list. I'll put Pittsburgh as fourth on the list. So these don't have a ranking necessarily, But this is, I think, Chicago probably ends up with the best shot at drafting first. Pittsburgh, I'd put it fourth. And then it's between Buffalo, Anaheim, the Islanders, and Philly. I'll say Philly fifth. I'll say Buffalo sixth. Islanders seventh, and Anaheim eighth. So I do think Anaheim is going to continue to be decent and some improvements going to be there. But this is how difficult it is to move up. And that's why I wanted to do 8, 8, 8, and 8. Because it does kind of show how difficult it is to move up. And it's not an insult to teams here. It's not even an insult to a few of the teams in here. It's just you have recency bias from the season before that will affect something like this. And it could be difficult trying to figure out who will or won't be a contender the following season, especially the first week of July. But it's fun to look at. It's fun to talk about. And it is something that I've noticed that there seems to be a tiered system now in the National Hockey League. And I don't know that that's always been the case. At some point this summer, I want to do a madness board where I look at it and see how many times before we've seen a tier list, how it's been changed since we got into the era of the salary cap, and if it was different before the salary cap. But either way, I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. This is just a fun video. It is just a fun video. It's just a fun idea I had of trying to tier things out for where things stand on July the 7th, where I feel teams are at this point. And let's see, everybody makes the playoffs on my list who made the playoffs this past season except Minnesota. And that's to get Utah above the line. So, who knows? But let me know your thoughts. Who do you think at this point has trended up maybe? Who do you think has trended down? And who should be number one in the running for McKenna this season? Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.